speaking of abortion, let's continue that. We've got Setuf in Spain. How do we pronounce your name? I feel so bad. I want to make sure that we get that right.
No, that's fine. It's Setuf.
Setuf. Is that better?
Yes, that's perfect.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for correcting us. So it says in the notes that you're a religious caller, you're a theist, and
yes.
You're calling all the way from Spain. Thank you for watching.
Yes.
And you want to talk about the morality of abortion. So what do you got?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to understand your position. Do you believe that permitting a woman to abort, like in general, not like very specific cases, but in general, do you believe that that is moral? Or the act of abortion, do you think that is moral?
Those are definitely two different questions. Do you want to?
I think that we are kind of trapped in this mindset of moral and immoral. And I think that it is moral in as much as any kind of healthcare is moral, in that we should be advocating for patients' rights and everything. But I don't think that talking about abortion in morality terms is actually as helpful as we're kind of led to believe, because it's just healthcare. And is healthcare moral? Like, what kinds of healthcare? We can get into a deeper conversation, but I would actually not say it's moral as a concept, just because it's just a tool to provide healthcare. So.
Yeah. Setuf, I have something that I want to say as well, but I want to give you the opportunity to respond to V, because I don't want us to both rush you.
Yeah. So we just want to send your position. Are you saying it's amoral because it's a personal choice?
No, I'm saying it's amoral in as much as any other healthcare is amoral. I would say that, would you say getting a cavity filled is a moral thing to do? It's moral to help people when their teeth hurt, sure. But the process of getting a tooth filled is not a moral concept, right? It's just a thing you do to get out of a particular bad health situation.
Okay, but wouldn't you say, do you consider the fetus at all a being, or is it just for you like an organ, basically, like it's my organ, I can do whatever, or do you consider the fetus as a being?
It depends on what point in the pregnancy we're talking about, I think. My answer would change. But I wouldn't say it's just an organ, because that's scientifically incorrect. It is its own thing. That's why we call it a fetus, as opposed to either an organ or a baby. But I would say, depending on the term, the answer would change. Yeah.
Okay, so you would say, yeah.
Oh, I wanted to give you I jumped in before I let you get the chance to respond to V, and that's rude on my part. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I just want to understand V's position clearly.
Yeah.
So you're just saying that at some point in the pregnancy, this fetus is an individual. Am I understanding you correctly?
I don't think I would use the term individual, because, again, we're talking about
being. Then?
A being. Yes, I think at a point in the pregnancy we could call it a being.
Okay, and at that point in the pregnancy, do you still feel like it's just a medical procedure like any other, or does it then become maybe a question which could be morally relevant for you?
It would become more complicated, for sure. But that is, again, based around the relationship of the people to the procedure. The procedure itself is the tool, and that is not moral or amoral. Whether or not an individual feels like it is something they should or should not do, then it becomes a moral concept for them. But I don't want to mix the two up, right?
Okay. But you would say it's a morally relevant question once the fetus is a being.
At that point, I think that there are a lot of questions that come up, especially because at the point where I would consider a fetus to fall more into the category of a being is very late on, and most people want that that fetus to survive at that point. And the only reason why it wouldn't be able to is either because it has complications that will kill it as soon as it's born, or the parent is going to suffer for it. So I think at that point, there are a lot of additional really nuanced and complicated things to think about. But again, just moving it into the sphere of moral versus immoral feels inaccurate and kind of simplistic.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. So I've got two parts. One is kind of a broader philosophical idea, and the other is a direct answer to the question. So I want to start with the broader philosophical idea first, because I think I can knock that out of the way pretty quickly. Just imagine for me for a second that someone invents true artificial intelligence. You got a computer and it is thinking on its own, it's feeling on its own, it's creating, all of these connections, and by every metric, you can tell, and we've seen that this computer is a thinking agent on its own. Could you follow me on that so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Would it be immoral to unplug that computer, or to destroy that computer?
Well, that's a tough one. Can this computer feel?
Yes.
I mean, if it can feel and it is a subjective experience, in my view, it would be. Yes.
You think it would be immoral? Okay. What about a less sophisticated computer that's not there yet? Like my computer right now. It can't feel, but it does have rudimentary computing power, and it does definitely have a lot of those things that can eventually basically become that. Would it be immoral to turn off or destroy this computer that we're using right now?
Not at all. And just to clarify, when I'm talking about the fetus and morality, I'm talking about when it has a subjective experience. And before that, I don't see any problem.
Sure. And I would think that if you're going to go with that, then I think that subjective experience, I would go with what in the United States, the Supreme Court went over viability and had a whole conversation about that. If you don't know about the history of Roe v. Wade, I suggest you check it out, because they had a drawn out conversation that a lot of people talk about as if they'd never read Roe v. Wade. And I think it's a great launching point to find where decisions have been made and moving forward. Now, the second part, because we do have a couple really great callers that I want to get onto, is at the very beginning, you said, should we permit women to have abortions? The word permit confuses me, because why do you think that you get to permit other people to do any of that in the first place? Why are we deciding whether or not we allow people to do things with their body that have nothing to do with you? Like, I think it's carrying, do you get what I mean? I think it's carrying this implication that you have the right to even say that in the first place.
Well, I would say for the same reason we forbid people to kill others unjustified.
Okay,
I mean,
so
if I see the fetus as an individual, and I see them being unjustifiedly killed, then that is for me permitting someone to kill another, right?
No.
That's why I said it.
No.
Okay.
I would say no.
Am I wrong?
No, you're not. You are not correct. So permitting includes in it this idea that you have a responsibility, and you don't. If someone gets shot out in front of your house with a gun and you don't know about it, did you permit that person to be shot?
No, I mean permit in terms of allowing it by law. Like if you say we'll punish you if you shoot somebody, that is us trying to not permit it. Of course, you cannot control anybody.
Well,
that's what I meant with permitting. Like,
got it. So
it legally.
It sounds like you're saying. Let me repeat this back to you. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, and I know we're going long, but I do want to just take just a few minutes and try and. I want to repeat this back to you to make sure that I've got you correctly. So you weren't saying you as a person permitting people to have abortions. You're saying that the government permitting people.
Society.
Well, society. The government.
Yeah.
Okay. So does the government?
Well, ultimately, yeah.
Okay. So I suggest you look up what our country did in Roe v. Wade and how that system and how that government made that decision and why it made that decision, using a lot of testimony from scientists and doctors and people at the time. Because I think that if more people read Roe v. Wade, there'd be an argument more about viability than there is about the general moral idea of a fetus in the first place. So I suggest you check that out, and I wish you the best. But I definitely challenge you, Setuf, to really reevaluate whether or not the idea of permitting somebody to do anything to themselves is something that should be allowed. And I think that starting with that, because I get you're getting the personhood thing, and I'm sure you understand that for us, since we don't view it as a person, it's not an issue, right?
Yeah, and I think that is the problem, that I'm not giving the fetus any moral consideration. I think that exactly is the issue.
Okay.
That we're not giving it any moral consideration at all.
Well, can I?
Yeah.
So here's the flip side to that. The flip side here is I don't actually go down the it's not a person route. I don't think that's a useful place to go. I generally agree that I would not personally classify it as a person, but my argument for providing abortion is that it doesn't hinge on that at all. So you're using abortion as an example, and you're saying an analogy would be going out and killing somebody. Well, we prevent that. Well, what about why wouldn't we also prevent abortion? And the issue here is that it's an inaccurate analogy. And let's see if I can break this down a little bit. So,
well, just referring in terms of the law not permitting something. That's the only analogy I was trying to, or the only link I was trying to make.
Right, right. And
yeah.
I would want to finesse that a little bit. My issue with preventing abortions is that regardless of the personhood of the fetus, that fetus is using someone else's body against that person's will. Yeah. And that person has a right, in my opinion, whether it's with an abortion, whether it's with a rapist, whether it's with somebody who is intruding in their home, to protect their bodily autonomy, even if it unfortunately means that the other person doesn't make it, right?
That's a really good point.
So for me, and we in Texas, we allow that. We say, hey, stand your ground law in Texas gives people, homeowners, the right to shoot someone who they think is on their property for bad reasons. And that's legal. And we allow that. And so for me, the issue is more bodily autonomy.
The stand your ground argument is amazing. And you know what? Actually, I'm thinking about it, and I know I've had this thought before, but that's a really good point. I mean, if you're looking at a burning building and there are people inside, are you going to be held responsible for not running into the burning building to save the people? No. Will you be congratulated if you do? Sure. But no one's going to say that you acted in an immoral way. It's a rough situation. And if you're in that situation where someone is using your body or your body is being used against your will, defending yourself would definitely be something that I don't think anybody would qualify as immoral. It's just
right. And here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. Abortion is not killing a fetus. The goal of an abortion is not to kill anything. It is to remove a fetus from another person's body. And up until the point of viability, that unfortunately means that that fetus doesn't survive. In the future, if we have the ability to put that fetus into some kind of container and grow them artificially, like, cool, we will do that. The goal is not to kill anything. The goal is to remove somebody who is taking control of somebody else against their will. And so the murder, abortion thing, even when we're just talking about the legal elements, it does become very important that we get that nuance in there. But we have a lot of other callers.
Yeah, that's true. Setuf.
Well, guys, you said a lot and so much to say to that. But I just want to ask one last thing.
Yeah, what's up?
What we just said about like artificial wombs, basically, in the future. Mm-hmm. So would you say at that point, if this is an existing technology, if somebody aborts and does not connect their child or the fetus to the machine, would you see that as immoral when that possibility is there?
That's a good question. And hypothetically, given the assumption that that is an option that is readily available for everybody, that would be an interesting conversation to have. But again, at the point where that becomes reality, who knows who has access to it financially or who has access to it, physically. So like there are other considerations there. But that's an interesting thought experiment.
Definitely. I would think bringing a life into the world that's not wanted or loved is immoral.
But killing it, I would say, is worse.
But you're bringing killing in again, and that's anyway. Setuf, thank you for calling in. Hopefully, you saw some productive. I know that people are definitely active in the live chat, so take care.
Yep, thanks. So it was pointed out to us about halfway through that call that the call screeners think that may have been a troll, and the name Setuf happens to be fetus backwards. And the person who called in to talk heathen last week using he, him pronouns and apparently was told people without a uterus should not weigh in. And
how funny.
That said, here's the thing. A couple things here. A, if you engage with us well, like Setuf did, we'll talk to you. Like, we don't care if you called other shows or if you're a troll or if you're using a different name. That's fine. Feel free to do that. We are also going to honor people's pronouns that they give us, regardless of whether or not we think they might be using them in a way that is not honest. And the reason for that is we could be wrong. We don't remember everybody who calls in. Somebody may be playing around with them. Somebody may actually not know what they are yet. So we're going to respect that. Please also respect that on your end if you are calling in. I know trolls are going to troll, but that's kind of just a common courtesy.
Yeah, I think that was a nice, respectful conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, we disagreed, and really, I think that's a big piece that hopefully with our show and hopefully with people seeing these conversations, disagreeing doesn't mean that it needs to be something that is hateful, spiteful, contentious. But being able to have these conversations is a really big step in changing people's minds and opening up people to questioning and working those things. So we appreciate it.